Oh man, how hasn't it changed in the last 5 years? I mean, so much has changed in the last 5 years. If we go back 5 years to the hazy days of 2020, I think by that point I had already adopted a hybrid workflow. But if we go back 7 or 8 years, I was almost exclusively in the box. All plugins, I didn't have the most amount of cash to spend on hardware compressors and such. Like I had a couple and they were nice, certainly. I've had these distressors here on my main desk right in front of me for years and years, and they were arguably one of my mains because they have such a unique sound and tonality to them, and the plugins that emulate them do a reasonable job, but it's like, Anyway, I'm getting lost in the weeds here. I was predominantly in the box, besides the preamps that I needed to get things recorded in. And even then, most of the time I was using strips. So I was using like a whole bunch of preamps connected via an ADAT or optical connection. And I was prioritizing a clean input so that I could then mess with it in the DAW, right? Yeah, I'd say about 7 or 8 years ago, I started making the shift back towards analog, and I started picking up more compressors, I picked up EQs, I picked up a whole bunch of tube stuff, and I started figuring out what worked best for me. I've thankfully been in a pretty stable workflow for the past 4 or 5 years, and that's very much a hybrid workflow. I do have a reasonable amount of analog gear that I operate with, but I do find that certain pieces of kit work better in the real, and other pieces of kit do work better in the digital. Please, I'm not here to start a comment war over me using the word real for a moment there. I did mean analog. But yeah, my workflow has very much stabilized. In the last 5 years, I'd say I've started using a lot more hardware synthesizers. As you can see, you know, I've got my Korgs, I've got my Neutron, I've got my Pro 800s. I'm using a lot more hardware synths. And I'm also adapting to more unique techniques of recording as opposed to just close micing everything. I have always sort of been very pragmatic with my recording, you know, just get a good clean source, make sure it sounds good from the recorded day, rather than thinking I'll try and fix it in the mix. But I will say that I've started experimenting with more interesting recording techniques because sometimes you've just got to get out of the box to make something fit in the box. So yeah, I'd say the biggest workflow change for me has been utilizing more hardware for things that arguably aren't as good at face value for being hardware. But I find that it slows me down just enough to actually have to be more purposeful and to think more carefully about what I do. Look, since COVID, I'm sure that everybody's workflows have had to change quite a lot. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. How has your workflow changed in the last 5 years, or even 1 or even 2? And if you have any thoughts on the way that I operate, I'd love to hear them. Just drop a comment, leave a like, share it with your friends so that they can roast me for my weird workflow as well.